I'm Pat Doris. Welcome to The Story. Let's talk about tolling, shall we? It seems inevitable. It's coming like a freight train, and the first tolls on I-205 could begin in less than 2 years, around December of 2024. The state of Oregon has a few big committees meeting right now to decide things like how much the tolls should be and where all that money should go. One of those groups met today. It featured pushback from ODOT against those who don't like tolling, tension with those who represent the trucking industry, and a plea from a city leader. And all of that together makes it our big story. From the outside, a committee meeting like this can look pretty boring. But sometimes, if you're paying attention, they're really fascinating because they reveal the stresses and strains of the community they represent. Like this one that ODOT had today. The group is called RTAC, or Regional Tolling Advisory Committee. It's made up of all sorts of folks and a lot of government types, including the Metro President, a county commissioner, Portland City Council member, folks like that. RTAC is the group that will probably decide where tolling money is spent, although actually they're still arguing a little bit over the charter, so that one's not set in stone. But ODOT plans to set up multiple tolling stations on both I-205 and Interstate 5 over the next few years, mostly around the Portland area. That has local governments very interested in where the tolling money goes because they want a lot of it spent keeping traffic off of their streets when people bail off the interstate to avoid the tolls. So it caught our attention when an ODOT official was asked at that meeting how much the tolls on 205 would generate. How much money would they make? The answer in the ballpark of $500 to $800 million, which does sound like a big number, except that's not a yearly number. That's the estimate of revenue for a total of 25 to 30 years. So put another way, assuming it is for 30 years, that would be between $16 to $26 million per year. Now, I know that's not nothing, but it doesn't seem like a ton of money either, considering how much people drive on 205. We'll keep an eye on that to see if that estimate changes. In the meantime, Mandy Putney, the director of the tolling programs for ODOT, pushed back a little bit against those who have been arguing that tolling is not needed. Here she is talking about a budget note from lawmakers in the 2021 session on a bill involving tolling.
The budget note also reaffirmed that additional funding sources, including tolls, are needed to keep up with transportation investments and needs, and that the use of tolls is fair and impartial way to improve the system for roadway users. ODOT and the Commission are moving forward now with this direction. The I-205 improvements now under construction have used the financing options provided by House Bill 3055. Pending completion of the environmental process underway for I-205 now, toll revenue could be used to pay back our costs that we've put out so far. Without toll revenue, the improvements on the rest of I-205 between Stafford Road and Oregon 213 will not move forward.
So that's ODOT's pitch for keeping things moving right along when it comes to tolling on 205. Putney also had an interesting exchange with Janet Jarvis, who represents the Oregon Trucking Association, which clearly, by the way, does not like the tolling plan. It's interesting, though. Putney first says she does not know exactly what a recent study shows in terms of traffic on 205 when the tolls are added, and then does remember.
So we are on the verge of releasing our draft environmental assessment for the 205 toll project, and there's a pretty detailed traffic analysis in there that looks at the area of potential impact. I don't have travel information in my head about that, so I can follow up with you afterwards. That looked at potential diversion related to tolling at the Abernathy and Tualatin River bridges.
It might be helpful for you to understand that from the trucking perspective, that trucks that are passing through Oregon tend to take I-205 to avoid the congestion on I-5. The trucks that are on I-5 are there because they're having to service the businesses in the Portland area, the ports, Rivergate, etc. They're there because they have to be. But I can promise you that that commercial traffic from out of state that's going through Oregon will probably divert to I-5 with tolling.
Yep. Right now, what we're showing is that with tolling and with the added third lane, when we're looking at the future, we're able to offer a much better trip for freight as well as for residents. So that we're looking at a situation in the future where we'd have 0 to 2 hours of congestion on that area of 205.
Okay, good memory. So those are impressive numbers if they're accurate, because they are best guesses at this moment. But Butney also said if nothing is done without tolling and that third lane, well, 205 will be backed up for 14 hours a day by the year 2045. But if tolling in the third lane are added, it'll be down to 0 or 2 hours a day. That almost sounds too good to be true. Finally, there's a ton of concern by folks who live along the freeways that when tolling starts, a lot of people are going to look for ways to bail off and go through their neighborhoods looking for ways to avoid the tolls. The leaders of places like West Linn are united against tolling, but if they cannot stop it, they at least want ODOT to focus on making it hard for people to clog their streets as they avoid those tolls. Here's West Linn Council President Mary Baumgardner.
West Linn is known for being wealthy. But I can tell you, after working for 15 years in the school system, there are many, many people who are suffering financially and have been. And in the most recent past, of course, our community has suffered from the impacts of COVID. And our small businesses have been barely hanging on. And if we have gridlocked traffic on our surface streets, people will avoid the area. For all the reasons stated previously, commercial, they'll avoid the area and burden I-5. People who would come on 205 to visit our community will go somewhere else. So please hear us. We would like regional implementation. I'm not against tolling. We need funding mechanisms for our transportation infrastructure, but we need ODOT to listen. Thank you.
So that call for regional implementation means don't just put it on 205, put it on I-5 and all the others so that people don't have an option. So why does any of this matter? Well, because it's a significant shift in the way that we pay for our roads in Oregon. The groundwork is being laid for a new era of tolling in our state, the likes of which you've never seen before. And yes, I know old timers are reminding me that there were tolls on the interstate bridge when it was first built, maybe even the 205 bridge. But those were temporary. The plan ODOT has now, backed by the legislature, will put tolls on areas of I-5 and 205 that do not have bridges. And once those go on, they are not coming off. You can love them or hate them. It's up to you. It's your choice. But I want you to understand what's happening along the way here. Finally, ODOT says they welcome your input. We've put the numbers up on your screens, been there for a while. Hope you've had a chance to write it down. But you can contact them through email. The address is OregonTolling@odot.gov. It's hard to say. OregonTolling@odot.oregon.gov, or just give them a phone call. 503-837-3536. You may have heard of the terrible tragedy last week. A polar bear attacked a woman and her young child, killing them both in a remote Alaskan village. It's the first fatal polar bear attack in Alaska in 30 years. Now, you might be asking yourself, how awful, but what's a local TV news outfit in Portland covering something like that happened 2,000 miles away? Why is this happening? Well, it turns out that environmental reporter Cale Williams has a personal connection to this village where it took place. What can you tell us about that?
Now, I first went to Wales in 2017. I was reporting on a series of stories for the Oregonian because it turns out that Nora, she's a popular polar bear here at the Oregon Zoo, she has ancestry up in this part of Alaska. So back in 1988, an Inupiaq hunter from Wales named Gene Agnabugak, he was out hunting on the sea ice when he fell into a polar bear den and landed on top of the mother bear. He was able to scramble off of her, but she came after him. And here's how he described it in an interview from 2017.
She was ready to pounce or jump or do something. That's when I went and shot her. That's when I noticed the cubs.
Now, after tending to his wounds, Agnabugak arranged for the cubs to be rescued, and one of those cubs would grow up to be Nora's father. So I went there in 2017 to interview Agnabugak, and I've been back twice since then while I was writing a book based on the Oregonian series.
It's so sad, and a very remote area, right?
It really is, and I mean, you really get a feeling for how remote it is just by trying to get there. From Portland, you fly to Anchorage. From Anchorage, you fly to Nome. And then, if the weather cooperates, which it often doesn't, you hop on a much smaller plane out to Wales. Now, the village itself is as far west as you can go on the North American continent. On clear days, you can actually see across the Bering Strait to the Siberian coast. And it really is one of the most unique and beautiful places I've ever had the privilege to travel as a reporter. But it is very, very small. The population there hovers around 150, and to call it a close-knit community doesn't really do it justice. People in Wales hunt for a lot of their food, and they share what they kill. It's tradition there for younger folks to offer the best cuts of meat to their elders whenever they have a successful hunt. So this is a place where everyone doesn't just know each other, they depend on each other.
What went through your mind when you saw the headline about this polar bear attack?
Yeah, I mean, my heart really just kind of sank to the pit of my stomach. I mean, this would obviously be tragic no matter where it happened, but the people I met in Wales were some of the most welcoming I've ever met while reporting. This village is almost 100% Alaska Native, and I went up there as some random white guy asking them about their hunting practices and their culture and climate change, and each of them, without exception, was happy to talk to me.
They sound like they're very welcoming and friendly folks. You mentioned climate change in there. What did they tell you about how things are different?
I mean, their world is changing. People have lived there for millennia, and it's getting warmer there, just like everywhere else. But it's getting warmer much faster there. Experts have said that the Arctic is warming up to 4 times faster than the rest of the world. And a lot of the animals they hunt for in Wales, seals, beluga whales, walrus, they all depend on sea ice. So as the climate warms and sea ice becomes more scarce, it's getting harder for hunters in Wales to provide for their families. Here's how Gilbert Oxerock, he's an elder in Wales, here's how he talked about it in 2017.
The effects of warming temperatures is affecting our hunting. You just learn how to adapt. If you don't learn how to adapt, then you're in trouble.
And it's not just trouble for people. Polar bears also depend on sea ice to hunt. And while we don't know the particular circumstances around this attack, experts have said that as food gets harder to come by for polar bears, the animals are more likely to have negative interactions with people as they become more desperate for food.
So we don't know specifically why the bear was in so close, but it is sort of logical that maybe the ice is melting and so they do get pushed more towards the village?
Yeah, I mean, that's what experts say.
And what happened as far as the attack?
I mean, the details are hard to hear, I gotta say. What we know is that a mother and her child, her name was Summer Miomic, she was 24 years old, she was walking from the school to the clinic in town with her infant son, Clydonc Tawazrock III. The accounts I've seen say the bear came up on them in what was near whiteout conditions, so it would have been basically impossible to see. As the attack was happening, several people ran out of the school and tried to get the bear away from Miomic and her son using shovels. But it apparently chased them back to the school, where the principal had to scramble to keep the bear from coming inside. At that point, someone else from the village came and shot the bear, but not before it killed this young woman and her son. It's truly just a terrifying and tragic incident in so many ways.
Yeah. Did you talk to the folks up there and what did they tell you?
Yeah, I was actually able to get in touch with Gene Agnabugak today. He said, you know, they're dealing with it about as well as can be expected. You know, they are planning to have a memorial service for Miomic and her son on Wednesday. And you just saw they have a GoFundMe page set up for the family, and they've already raised over $21,000.
So what is your takeaway from all this?
I mean, it's hard for me to wrap my head around the grief that they're going through up there. I mean, I'm glad to be able to offer my perspective as somebody who has been to this place that not many people get to go to. And I think it's important that we consider what kind of climate implications there are for this attack. But ultimately, this is not about me, and it's not even about climate change. This is about Summer Miomic and Clydonc Tawazrock and all the people who are dealing with their loss right now. So I just have to say that my heart goes out to all of their friends and their family and everyone else in Wales.
And while it's not specifically about climate change, that is one more chapter in this longer narrative of climate change.
It is, and this is kind of an example of something that I've been thinking about a lot, which is that often the people who have contributed the least historically to climate change are often on the front lines of its effects.
Yeah, because they're living right on the edge there. Yeah,
That's right.
So sad. All right, thanks, Cale. We're lucky to have you. Still to come on The Story.
The Portland Trailblazers have won the World Championship.
An iconic man, an iconic voice, and of course, that iconic phrase.
To patch it from 15.
The mayor of Rip City, Bill Schonely, passed away over the weekend. We're taking a look back at his legendary career with the Trailblazers.
Good evening, basketball fans, wherever you may be.
When The Story returns.
I'm at a loss for words. Just, I'm gonna miss it. I'm gonna miss it. One more time for me. On the count of 3, I want you to say, Rip City, all right. And let me hear it. 1, 2, 3, go.
Fans, one more time, let's hear it for the mayor of Rip City, Bill Schonely.
Ah, yes, a legend in Portland and the man who proudly coined the Rip City phrase so common today. Bill Schonely passed away over the weekend at the age of 93. He was one of the very first hires of the Blazers organization back in 1970 and served as the team's play-by-play voice for nearly 30 years. Even when he was done calling games, he was a fixture at the Moda Center, where he served as a team ambassador. Alma McCarty takes a look back at an icon, the mayor of Rip City.
From 15,
From 1970
The Portland Trailblazers have won the World Championship.
to the present day, his was a voice known well.
Good evening, basketball fans, wherever you may be.
Bill Schonely, the mayor of Rip City, the Shons, a legend.
I think Bill was the most popular figure ever in the history of the Trailblazers. That's over 50 years. He was there from year one, and he was very proud of that. He was proud of being such a popular voice, not just voice, but figure throughout all that time.
On Saturday, the 93-year-old passed away, as first reported by his friend and biographer, Kerry Eggers.
People remembered him from the days of their childhood. I had so many people come up to me and tell me how often they had, how many warm memories they had of listening to him on the broadcast.
Bill Schonely was born on June 1st, 1929 in Norristown, Pennsylvania. His career in broadcasting began during his time in the Marine Corps while serving in the South Pacific. KGW spoke with Schonely back in 2017.
I started Armed Forces Radio in late 1949, and I've been in the business ever since. And that really whetted my appetite.
Then, in 1970, he got a call from Harry Glickman about his brand new NBA team in Portland. He joined the organization, one of the very first hires. For nearly 30 years, he was a play-by-play announcer, calling over 2,500 games, including the team's championship run in 1977.
There's a bedlam out there. I could hardly see, and I'm darting around with the mic, with a headset on, and it was wonderful.
He went on to serve as the team's ambassador, starting in 2003. Blazers head coach Chauncey Billups and star player Damian Lillard expressed just how much Schonely meant to the team and to the sport.
Just revered around the league. So it's a sad day, a very sad day for us and this organization, this fan base.
Anybody that knows him knows that he immediately told me that he was the person that came up with Rip City. That was one thing that he owned, and something that he was extremely proud of. A lot of the names that are hanging up, you look at the history of this organization and all the great players that have come through. He wanted that to be known, and he spoke on it very often, and those were the times, where he was probably most into it.
Bill Schonely retired in 2022.
They had a retirement night for him, the last game of the season in April, and while he knew he would get a nice reception, I think he was overwhelmed by the love and respect that he got that night, and I think he would feel obliged to say that he enjoyed the relationship just as much as those fans did over the years.
I have done many events such as this, but always for somebody else. And to have it happen for me, thank you very much.
The Blazers tell us there will be a private service and a public celebration of life for Schonely. Details for that public event have not been announced just yet. If you'd like to see more stories about Schonely, visit the KGW YouTube page. We have a playlist up now called Remembering Bill Schonely. I think my favorite memory is just hearing him roar, Rip City! We'd love to hear your memories of the legendary Blazer broadcaster. Maybe you remember listening to him through the years, or maybe you got the chance to meet him. Tell us about it, will you? Send us an email to thestory@kgw.com or call and leave a voicemail, 503-226-5090. Oregon became the country's 33rd state back in 1859. We're far from the nation's oldest, but there's still a ton of history here. And that includes names of places and things around us. Tonight we're talking about Warrendale. Our Devin Haskins has a great segment called What's in a Name, where he figures out places and how they got their monikers. For this one, Devin found himself researching fish canneries and the Titanic, because those two things are connected to the man behind that name, Warrendale.
From above, it's nothing more than trees and houses. From the freeway, it's an exit sign, often passed up. This is Warrendale in East Multnomah County.
Have you ever been to Warrendale?
I have. There's not much there.
Dr. Frank Warren's great-great-grandfather, Frank Warren, is who the community was named for.
I guess an entrepreneur or business owner from Oregon.
The elder Warren was a very successful businessman, investing in the fish cannery business that was booming along the Columbia River. At the time, dozens of fish wheels, large wheels that acted like rotating fish nets, were scattered in the Columbia catching salmon.
These were pulling out like 42 million pounds of fish at the peak of their usage.
Warren opened the Warrendale cannery to clean, can, and ship them downriver. Frank Warren's cannery, the Warren Packing Company, was the largest in the area and raking in the money.
It was a good investment at the time. There was a growing demand for Columbia River salmon around the United States.
Besides being a businessman, he was also a husband. So celebrating their 40th wedding anniversary in 1912, he and his wife Anna went on a European vacation. Now, if you're wondering why we're going from talking about fish canneries and fish packing to an anniversary trip, stick with me here. I have a sinking sensation, though, you're not gonna like the outcome.
Their whole goal was to go to Egypt, and so obviously that's a long journey. So they took a train across the United States, they took a boat to Europe, then they traveled across Europe and eventually made it to Egypt. Then they were on their way back.
Yeah, so on their way back, they boarded a ship. It was the largest passenger ship ever to be built at the time. It was said to also be unsinkable. Their return trip was, of course, aboard the ill-fated Titanic. Newspaper reports from days later described Warren as a hero. His wife Anna, who survived, told the newspaper, "We were both fully dressed when the crash occurred." She went on to say they were told to get into the rescue boats. Her husband helped other women. Then before she knew it, the boat was full and being lowered. "The last I saw of Frank," she said, "he was standing by the rail and waving to me and calling that he would be on the next boat. I never saw him again." Frank Warren was among the more than 1,500 that died when the Titanic sunk. He was the only one from Oregon.
There's a potential that they were not supposed to be on the Titanic, but they were.
Anna Warren would never speak publicly of the Titanic again. In 1928, fish wheels would be banned in Oregon, and in the coming years, the Warrendale cannery would close. Today, you can still see some of the pilings that once held the very lucrative business of the Warrendale Packing Company. They sit along the Columbia River shoreline near the community of Warrendale. And that's what's in a name.
All right, Warrendale. Keep sending your questions and comments to thestory@kgw.com. We're going to wrap things up right after this. Well, that's the end of our show. Thanks so much for watching. And remember, the story, our collective story, that never ends. I'll see you tomorrow night.